The quickest way to learn Bash is to never leave the terminal, but how do you do that when you don't know what commands to use and how to use those commands? Well, there are actually just two commands that you should learn first that will help you answer all those other questions. And those two commands are the help command and the man command, which is short for manual. So here I am in my favorite IDE of choice, Visual Studio Code, and to open up the integrated terminal, I will hit the Control and tilde command to open up the integrated terminal. Now you'll notice over here that it does say that I'm in a Bash shell. The integrated terminal does support different options. You can have PowerShell and so forth, depending on what's installed in the image. But because this code space is using Ubuntu, the default shell for that is Bash, and that's why we have that option there. Now, just to make things more legible, I'm going to increase the size a couple times. And then also I'm going to expand the integrated terminal to take up the full screen or to maximize the panel size, because I'm not going to use the code prompt, or I'm not going to be using the editor in this series. I'm strictly going to be in the command line. And so we can expand that all the way up and get a very command prompt type feel even inside the IDE. So as I mentioned before, the best way to get really productive and efficient with Bash and inside the terminal or command line of any sort is really just to spend a lot of time here. And the number one tool that's going to help you do that and prevent you from having to go to a web browser and Google and look for things is the help command. So the help command is a built-in command into Bash, and it allows you to get back information about other commands. So there's a little bit of a chicken and the egg scenario where you need to know the command that you want to use in order to get help on it. So let's just assume that you wanted to investigate the cd command, the change directory command. So you would type in help, and then you would type in the name of the command. And once you hit enter, you'll be presented with a lot of information. So let's scroll to the top and just walk through each of the sections, and then we'll talk about them in more detail. So the very first line that you'll see is the command itself, all the optional parameters it has, and the order that you can use them. And how you interpret this line is anything inside the square brackets is optional. And then anything that's divided by a vertical bar, or also called the pipe symbol, means that it's mutually exclusive, meaning that you can use one of the options or the other, but not both. If you do both, you're going to get an error message. An example of that is the -L and -P parameter. You can use one or the other with E. That's why there's those double brackets there with P. But you can't use L and P together. Now, what do L and P mean? Well, L and P are the options that are allowed for this command, and those are all listed underneath the options section. And so you can go to the options section to get more information about those different optional arguments. But you can use it also by itself by just passing in the directory, which you see there. Now, below that syntax, what you see is an introduction and summary of the command itself. So cd stands for change the shell's working directory, and then it has some more information about what that means and the different ways that you can use that, and then some kind of context around what happens when directories aren't found and error codes and stuff like that that return back. But typically how you're going to make the most use of this command is you're going to scan this top section here, figure out how you can use the command, what different options are available, then look down in the options. Now, if the help command doesn't give you what you need or enough information, there is another command that you can use to get even more information about the command itself. But before I do that, let me clear the screen here and show you another way to call the help. So oftentimes you're going to be typing the command as you go, and then you're going to get stuck and realize that you need to run the help command. So instead of clearing your entire line, you can actually just type the name of the command and then --help, and you'll get the same screen. So that's another way to go about it. If you're in the middle of typing a command, you can do help, and then it'll return this help prompt back to you. Again, this is for the built-in commands. Now, conveniently enough, a lot of other command line shells like Azure CLI and so forth, they support this same model of help. So as you're using the commands, you could type the command itself, cd again, --help, and it will present you with the help for that particular command or subcommand. Now, what if the help file itself, or what was returned from the help, didn't give you enough detail? Well, that's where the man command, or what's short for manual, comes into play, where you can read the full documentation inside the terminal about the command. So if we do man cd, we'll now be presented with the entire manual page for this command. Now, before I start browsing around in this manual file, I want to share with you some ways that you can improve your navigation here, because this assumes that you're at a terminal with no mouse. And so scrolling kind of works, kind of doesn't work, depending on the way that this is presented. And the way that you can get information about how to navigate the manuals inside here, because you're not inside your shell anymore like you were at the help, you've opened up a text file in your command prompt. And so how you can get to the help of the manual itself is just by hitting the H key. And then in here, underneath moving, you'll see all the different ways that you can move about the help pages. There are a couple that I want to bring your attention to, which is the half page and full page. And then single character. So if you wanted to move just a half page down, half page at a time, you would do D. And if you want to go up a half page, you use U. And these commands map to commands that are in Vim and other text editors. If you wanted to move a full page, you would hit space. And then if you wanted to move just a single line, that's the J to go down and K to go up. So again, if you can't remember all that, or if you get stuck, you can hit H and you can come to the help page of the manual, and underneath the moving section, you'll be able to see all the different options. You can also search and so forth like that, which I'll show you in a second. Now to quit the help page, you just hit Q. You don't have to do right quit or anything like that like you would in Vim. So hopefully you don't get stuck there. Now, so as we go through here, the very first thing, the prologue, that's typically not important. What you want to skim down is to the name and synopsis. Well, prologue's maybe not important, but it's not useful for you if you want to learn the command. It's more about the manual and the documentation. So the name of the command, again, we're just getting the brief name. This is going to look very familiar to the help. And then the synopsis should also look very familiar. That's that first line showing you what the command is, how to use it, and the different optional parameters. Now inside the directions, if we go down, or the description rather, we'll see a very detailed explanation of this command and what it does in different situations. So if you wanted to deep dive into that, you definitely can. If we continue to scroll down, we'll see all the different options in more detail. A lot of these are very similar to the options and the information presented about the options in the help. So this just gives you more explanation. And then there's the operands that you can use with it. So how you would use these operational arguments with the command, the different standard in that's not used for this particular case. What if you did input files? All that's going to be in here. But how I'd recommend that you use this, if we go back up to the top, is we look at the name and the synopsis, and then typically what you're going to do is you're going to want to search for the examples. And to do that, you just hit the / and type examples. And then this is going to search this whole document, the manual for examples, and we're going to find the examples for this command. And in here, there's only one example that says CD location, and then we're given an if statement to see if that particular path was existed or not. And if it did, or if it didn't, then it's going to throw an error. So this might be something very useful to throw in a bash script. But that's how I would typically recommend that you navigate these manual pages, is you look at the synopsis, you look at the different options that come with it, and then you can come down and read the examples for how to use it. And then a lot of the other stuff is more contextual background information that might be useful in some advanced cases as you go on. But the number one thing to remember with all this documentation is consume what is useful and relevant for you now. You do not have to read this like a textbook and remember everything and understand the command fully to use it. There's probably 70% of everything in the documentation that I don't know, and I've been using Bash for years and years and at the command prompt for more than a decade. So don't feel like you need to know everything in here. And lastly, how you exit the manual pages is you just hit the Q character. You can also hit escape if you want. But that wraps up this introduction to getting help in the Bash prompt. Again, these are the two commands that you want to remember first, because they're going to keep you in the terminal, keep you practicing, give you more experience, and make you more efficient with Bash overall.